It's recording now.
Okay.
So I guess could you just describe, you came up with the idea, right? Can you describe?
The twinning?
Yeah.
Yes.
The twinning. How did that, like where did your inspiration come from? Or when did you start thinking about it?
It started back in 1982 when I got married and wanted to take a honeymoon to Ireland. And my parents had visited there in 1979. And through some mutual friends that are connected to Beaver Island, the husband was born and raised in Ireland. So he made a map of things that they should see and things they must see and things traveling around Ireland for a couple of weeks. So in 1982, when my wife and I went over there for our honeymoon, we pretty much followed that same map that this fella had provided 3 years previous to that, and my parents had a fabulous time. And of course, one of the stops was to Burtonport to go out by ferry, then out to Arranmore. Well, in 82, there wasn't even a ferry. It was a fish boat. So we were in Burtonport, and this woman by the name of Mary Campbell, that my dad had taken, or had a picture of her with him. I went to her, and she says, well, Danny Boyle will be going over to Arran today. Go ask him for a ride. So we walked down to the pier and asked for Danny Boyle, and he said there will be no sailings to Arranmore today because of the weather. It was too windy. So I went back to Mary's shop, and she says, Danny says there will be no sailings to Arranmore today. She grabs me by the arm and says, come on. And she takes me down there, and she says, Danny, these people came all the way from Beaver Island to go to Arranmore, and you're taking them. And he said, oh, I didn't know they were from Beaver Island. So he shakes our hands and all that. But he was thinking that it probably was someone that wasn't familiar or comfortable with rougher waters and things like that. And so didn't want to take just anybody. So he took us over, and it was on a Sunday, and we were walking down a path pretty much in 82. It was still tractors that people used as a mode of transportation because it was difficult to get cars on the island. They actually put them like on the side of these double-ended boats that they used for fishing and things like that. As I said, there wasn't a regular ferry service. Anyway, when we were walking down to what's called the Boyles, here comes a tractor with the dad and the mom and 6 of their 7 children riding to what we found out they were headed for Mass. And they're the only people that live down this road, so they stopped and were dragging our suitcases, and they can tell you're an American from a mile away. And they said, where are you headed? And we said, well, we're headed to the Boyles bed and breakfast. And they said, oh, we're the Boyles. So they turned around and came back. They skipped Mass. And once we were inside their home, they said, where are you from? And we said, a little place called Beaver Island. And they said, oh, in Lake Michigan. I said, how did you know that? And one of them that was probably 7 or 8 years old, maybe Danny, the youngest one, ran out with an atlas, and he's pointing to Beaver Island in this atlas. And I said, how do you know about Beaver Island? And they said they teach it to us in school because of the number of people that immigrated from that island to Beaver Island in the 1800s. So I thought, wow. And I'm 5th generation born and raised on Beaver Island, and this is the only place I've ever had a problem leaving. When I went to college and things like that, although I knew I would come back and live here, but it was very difficult for me to leave here to go to college. And after 2 days on that island with that family that were pretty sleepless and all of that, because I just wandered and was thinking about the ancestors and everything that left from there and never were able to return to their home or to their families or this or that. There was something very, very strong about being there. And when it came time to leave, I didn't want to leave. So we vowed that we would return and everything else. And of course, we thought that it would be 25 years before we would ever return to there. But as it turns out now, we've probably been there close to 30 times.
Really?
So,
I had no idea.
yeah. And my in-laws have gone with us. My mom has gone with us. A couple of my brothers have visited there now, and they always were asking, why Arranmore? Why is that such a big thing? And it only took them one time to go there and meet the people and feel the love and the accommodations and everything else for them to come back and say, now we get it. So it's uncanny, the similarities in the lifestyle and the family structure, everything between Beaver Island and Arranmore. So of course it's after these repeated visits there that I made some very, very good relations with people that live there, and thought, you know what, this place needs to be the twin to Beaver Island. So one year here on Beaver Island, I went to a township meeting where it's open to all the public to make resolutions and so forth. And Cindy Gillespie went with me, and I offered a resolution to the township at that meeting to officially begin the twinning ceremony, or the twinning structure for Beaver Island and Arranmore. And it was unanimously approved, and we took it to the county level and the state level and the federal level. And with our friend Dermot Gallagher, who was the consulate general to, at the time, the Taoiseach was Bertie Ahern, to the highest levels of the Irish government and the Donegal County Council, is everyone passed resolutions that officially twinned the two communities, and then we had reciprocating trips between Beaver and Arranmore. The people from Arranmore came here first, and then in 2007, probably 50 or 60 of us went to Arranmore for a dedication of a grotto that they did to commemorate the connection, or the official twinning between the two island communities, which incidentally now has burned. There's been a lot more correspondence and other relationships that have been made, and just people that keep in touch that have made friendships, and people now that travel to Ireland go there and make that a part of their, make sure that's a stop and things like that. So
do you think this whole process has inspired more people on the island to feel more of a connection to Ireland? Like, do you think it was there as strongly before? This is really...
No, and the way it really got started was a woman by the name of Helen Collar, who studied genealogy. Her son-in-law is David Broder, who was the Washington Post columnist. I was asked by the Broder family for the memorial service of Helen Collar, and she had visited Beaver Island for the summer for probably 60-some years, and she made repeated trips back to Ireland to trace the genealogy of the Beaver Island families, and for many of them it originated on Arranmore. And if it hadn't been for her, we perhaps would not have known the significance and the number of the people that were connected to Arranmore. So at her memorial service, I thanked Helen Collar for really preserving our history and what it meant, and what she gave to not only my family but to most of the original, the large island families that reside here, for what she shared with us and what she taught us. And so Dave Broder quoted some of what I said in the Washington Post, and Dermot Gallagher wrote Dave Broder a note that said, wow, this Beaver Island sounds like quite the place. Well, Dave Broder is a very good friend of our family's and has been for years. He told me, he said, Bill, you should write him and invite him to Beaver Island. So I did, and he accepted, and I could go on for a whole day and talk to you about coincidences, and I I tell my kids all the time, pay attention to what goes on around you, because there's all kinds of coincidental stuff that happened. Even that first trip to Arranmore, where I took a picture from this boat because it was splashing and things like that. So they had us up in the bow, and I took a picture to the stern of the vessel. Several years later, I was running the register down here, and there's a man, a woman, and 3 children in here, and it was around Easter time. And when the woman was paying for her stuff, I could tell immediately that she was Irish because of her accent. So I looked at her and I said, "Where are you from?" And she said, "We're from Arranmore." And I said, "Oh my God." So of course we invited them over for dinner after the Easter vigil and things like that. I kept looking at her husband thinking, from that first time I saw him, man, it's like I know you or something. It was eerie. So after we had them for dinner that night, I put slides into our projector and was projecting them onto our wall. And I hit this slide, and here in the center of the picture, as big as life, is this guy. It looked like the picture was taken of him, but it was really just to take it of the boat and this and that. But here's this guy in the center of this picture, and that's just one of many, many things that's like, wow, this is unbelievable. And so he was living in Chicago at the time, and I went and saw his mother on Arranmore and had a picture of him, and she hadn't seen him for a number of years, and she just grabbed the picture from me and clutched it to her chest and said, "Oh, my Tony," and started crying and had me in for tea and scones and all that, and a nice visit. But it's, I don't know, it's very significant to Tammy and I and a lot of people now from Beaver Island that make it a repeat. My children have been over there, all of them, on multiple occasions, and thoroughly enjoy it. Proud to say that after like 150 years, Tammy and I are the first people from Beaver Island that actually own property now on Arranmore and built a home over there. And, and it's high on our priority list every year to go back and visit with our friends that are like family. And the Earleys have 6 children, and they have all the wedding pictures of their kids and all their grandchildren and this and that. Every time we go to their house, here's the photo of Tammy and I and our kids in with their kids. So they keep us connected and talk to them. I talked to Philip Early yesterday, who is one of their sons, and he lives in this country, but and they have 2 daughters that live in Chicago. So just keep in touch with them. Yeah.
Have you been to other parts of Ireland?
Actually, even again yesterday, I had some people ask me that are making plans for a trip to Ireland to come in and see me about where they should go and what they should do. And there are literally dozens of people that do that, and I asked them where they're flying into, which is typically Dublin, how long they're going to stay, and then if they have any connection to Beaver Island, I try and get them to Arranmore, but it's kind of like trying to get to Beaver Island if you were coming to Detroit or something. It's more of a commitment to get there, but we've gotten notes and gifts and thank yous from dozens of people that we have provided an itinerary. I could actually give a hell of a tour of Ireland. And while I'm happy that it has changed so that their economy was better, even a few years ago, when we went in '82, the roads were pretty unimproved. It was very unusual to find ice to have with a soda. The beer wasn't cooled, things like that, but it's become very westernized because of the number of people. And since '82, I've seen significant changes to the country. But in '82, it was sad because most of the young people that lived there, all they wanted to do was get to America. And some would even move to Australia and spend some time in Australia thinking that it was easier to get from Australia to the U.S. than it was from Ireland to the U.S. So they were just working out different ways to try and get into this country, which I thought was sad because they didn't realize what a beautiful country they had and what they had going for them. And I talked to them now about the immigration a few years ago back to Ireland, which one would think that it was the Irish that were moving back to the country because the population increased so much. It wasn't the Irish necessarily moving back. It was some, but it was a lot of other European countries, the Polish, the Czechoslovakians, Romanians, things like that were moving to Ireland a lot because of the social structure, the social programs, which when the economy was going great, that was good for them, but everything has its cycle, and I had discussions with my buddy Jerry earlier that, hey, it's going to peak and then it's going to tank, and then what are you going to do? You're going to have some real social issues, which that has come to fruition now. They have some real problems in the country, but it's still a fantastic place to visit. I love sharing with people our experiences of places they should go and places they must go, and that way I can vicariously relive all of the trips that we've made around Ireland. We know much more about the country, that country, than most people that probably live there. So I should grab this a second. No, somebody's got it.
Sure.
No, they're talking to them. So, but yeah, it's huge to us. We love it.
I guess I'm kind of curious about the language aspect. Like maybe, are there any documents, or was the language brought over from Arranmore, the Gaelic, the Irish, over to Beaver Island? And has there been any interest of people here living on Beaver Island to maybe learn Irish? When
we started going there in '82, of course, especially in the west of Ireland, Gaelic was still spoken in a lot of the places, and they even have different dialects, as you probably know. And people from Donegal can tell if it's somebody from Kerry or from Tipperary, or like we can tell if it's somebody from Boston or something like that when they speak to you just by what they say. But at that point and then our subsequent visits, we could see that they were really trying to bring that language back because the young kids were all learning English and so forth. But the kids also knew Gaelic. And so there's times when we actually would have to find this kid that spoke English that would translate for us into Irish to talk to a parent or a grandparent or something. But yeah, it was quickly being lost over there, but now it's very strong. And I wouldn't necessarily say that there's people on Beaver Island that are trying to learn Gaelic. It's a very difficult language to learn, very difficult. Not that it wouldn't be nice, but the people that came here in the mid-1800s certainly spoke Gaelic, and I didn't realize until 1982, growing up here, mannerisms that I thought were Beaver Island mannerisms, they weren't from Beaver Island. They had come down through the generations, including my own father and some uncles and others that would say things and do things that were being done over in Ireland. I thought, oh my God, this isn't something that started on Beaver Island. This came through generations of ancestors, and this is where it came from. Only two places that I've ever seen different things or experienced them, and that's where it came from. But these are people that had never gone to Ireland or Arranmore or anything like that, so it just transcended through the generations.
What is an example of one that you can?
When you're passing someone, how you do a quick nod instead of maybe a wave, a nod of the head. When you're speaking, a lot of people over there, when they say yes, it's a breath in to say yes. There's quite a few, not so many anymore, but my dad did it, my Uncle Russell Green did it, different people. The similarities in looks of people here when you travel around Ireland and you see somebody, oh my God, that person looks just like so-and-so. And staying in bed and breakfast over there that are older than our country. And there's this one woman, her name's Chris Linane. And I call her Aunt Rose Cunahan. She's not my aunt at all, but we stayed at Chris Linane's in a little town called Doolin on the west coast near the cliffs of Moher. And their farmhouse is hundreds and hundreds of years old. She looks like Aunt Rose. Her mannerisms are like Aunt Rose. Everything is like when we went back like the second time and this and that, I would be invited right into her kitchen while she's preparing breakfast to visit with her. And they don't have maple syrup in Ireland, so I would take maple syrup over from Beaver Island and hand that out as gifts. Of course, when you could carry liquids on the plane, you wouldn't want to put that in your luggage, but can't do that anymore. But that was a gift that was unique from Beaver Island to take to pass around to different B&Ds that we've repeatedly stayed at when we would make our return trips to Ireland.
So growing up here on the island, what kinds of traditions and practices did your family have that you felt were distinctly Irish or Irish American?
I think because of Beaver Island, the isolation is that everyone looks out for each other's children, and children here are not shy. They get involved with adult conversation, and they're comfortable around adults and things like that, but they have their freedom to explore and be kids, but they also know that they have responsibilities, and that it doesn't matter if it's a parent that sees them, if they're misbehaving, they're going to get corrected. And it's not that you're going to rat them out or anything, but they'll know, okay, I best make sure I straighten up or something like that. So it's a community way of raising children in a fabulous environment that is without a lot of crime or drugs or things of that nature. So kids can be kids. I would say that's one of the most significant. That's true on Arranmore as well, because everybody looks out for each other. They can battle, as families even battle, but when push comes to shove or whatever, everybody can pull together as a unit and make sure that whoever needs help gets it. So I would say that's one of the more remarkable attributes that is common between people that live on islands, or that are as isolated as we are.
Are there any traditions in particular that are like of Irish origin, or maybe even just stories, folk tales?
Yeah. Well, they did a DVD a number of years ago that's called Beaver Island House Party. In Ireland, of course, there's the pubs, and the pubs are the gathering places where you share the news and the drinks, and used to be the smoking, which isn't so much anymore. But on Beaver Island, what would happen too is that you get there's a lot of talent with musicians and so forth, that you go to these house parties and you typically end up in someone's kitchen and sing songs to the wee hours of the morning, and the guitar might get passed around, or if you can't play the guitar, you're expected at some point, you'll give a song, and as they say, give it a go. Things like that. Probably things like that, just subtle things that are similar that are special.
And I've also seen a lot of symbols, like Celtic symbols, around the island.
Mm-hmm.
Has that been brought in organically, or was it something, I don't know, because of tourism to kind of lure people in?
We've always called Beaver Island like America's Emerald Isle.
Yeah.
But I would say that particularly this reconnection with Arranmore has made a significant change in educating us about, wow, this is why Beaver Island is the way it is. That's why we want to keep that Irish influence and character as such an important part of island history. And I, years ago, probably would have never known what an eternity knot was, or what the different Celtic designs mean and this and that, but now it's huge. Just insignificant things that mean so much. So.
And would you say a good percentage of the island knows about these things?
The original island family, certainly.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that have moved to Beaver Island that contribute to a lot of very important local causes, but perhaps aren't as interested in the Irish ancestry or things like that. Mm-hmm. But as long as the core Beaver Island families are on the township boards and in charge of the church and the fire department and involved with the health center and the school and all that, that's going to be, it'll remain very, very strong. And the people that come here will have to accept that. That's a part of the charm, and if they came here because they love it, they better like that too, because that's the way it is.
I think that may be a reason why they come here.
yeah, part of it. And there's some people that I wouldn't resent, might be too strong a word, but some of them think there's too much emphasis put on the Irish. It's like, well, my family's Polish or German or something. Well, that's great. No, nothing against you, but we build Beaver Island around the Emerald Isle connection through the Irish. So, and I have Norwegian in me, and my children have German in them, and I have French in me, and so I'm a mutt. My children have more Irish in them than I do. So.
Do you know anything about when your Irish ancestors first came to the island, when that was, and anything genealogically?
Yeah, in the mid-1800s, from what Helen Collar, her research indicates, is that my ancestors, McDonough is actually a Galway name, and Dr. John Duffy remembers talking to my grandfather about where particularly the McDonoughs came from, and this Sylvester McDonough met some people on one of the boats that was coming to the Americas, but it was easier often to get into the U.S. through Canada than it was through New York, through Ellis Island. So our family,
transfer the register, please,
and a lot of the Beaver Island families actually would have come through Canada to Beaver Island, and they were. I believe what happened is that before there was the road infrastructure and boat travel was the mode of transportation for goods and everything else, lumber that was headed to Chicago and Milwaukee and everything else, is that Beaver Island, with this natural deep water port and with all of the wood, and they used cordwood and slab wood to fire the steam boilers. It was before there was oil and all of that they came in here and thought, my God, this place is like Ireland, but there's soils here we can grow our vegetables with. There's fabulous fishing around here. So I honestly believe that it was some of those Irish that worked on those earlier boats that came here and saw this and thought, oh my God, this would be a place to to settle, and of course with homesteading, the federal government giving away property, I think the Boners were some of the first ones to be here, and then sent word and then sent money and all that about this place, and it just, they were sailors, they were fishermen, they were farmers, and so this was a paradise to them. I would say the most significant change they would have had to deal with is the winters, because even though Ireland is at a farther or northern latitude than Beaver Island, is the Gulf Stream runs up around there, so it keeps them pretty temperate on a year-round basis, and it doesn't much get below 40 degrees Fahrenheit. We're here, where it gets well below zero and several feet of snow. I think that the winter adjustments had to be the most significant change for them to become accustomed to. But on the other hand, we have all this wood that they could use to heat a home and things like that. So it's not like there was a lack of fuel to do that.
We went to see Beaver Tails on Friday, and we heard a lot about the kind of Beaver Island ingenuity, resourcefulness, and do you think, can you maybe explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, when, by virtue of where we live, which I often say, is that we're the most remote inhabited community in the contiguous United States. When you came across by ferry, it's 32 miles. So we are, and if you fly over here, it's amazing for me, and I never take it for granted to see this patch of dirt out in the middle of this sweet water, fresh water, and think, oh my God, my kids are now the 6th generation born there. You don't have repair services and everything available at your beck and call that you'd have when you live on the mainland. So I think it's by osmosis almost that our children learn that if something breaks or something of that nature and you don't have the part exactly that you need, you figure it out. You improvise, and there's a lot of very, very smart people that are their ingenuity about creating stuff to if I was on a boat out in the ocean with a bunch of people, I would want somebody there that came from a place that had to figure stuff out, that has that intellect and the ingenuity to say, okay, I can rig this up so that we can get it back to shore. It's kind of like Apollo 13. Like, how are we going to make it work? Figure it out. Here's what we have. Something here will get it to work so that we can get back to shore. And I think our kids, they just learn that from their parents and from other kids. And
do you have any short story that comes to mind that you want to share?
I've done some myself, but I don't want to use those. Yeah, nothing really comes particularly to mind, but
little things here.
We do take that for granted. It's like it's something you just do. It's part of who we are.
We're particularly interested in the idea of identity, and we wanted to know just what do you think it means to be an Irish American? Like, what do you think, or what does it mean to you?
Well, very proud, obviously, and I'm proud of my Norwegian and my Not so much my French ancestry, but I have visited France also and was treated very, very well. And actually the greatest dining experience I've ever had in my life was in France, and it was fun because it was my wife and I and my in-laws and a restaurant full of French people that, of course, they know that you're an American. We spoke very, very little French, but a French dinner in a really nice restaurant in a town that didn't have a gas station or a motel or anything, but had this restaurant that was a converted stable. They waited on us hand and foot, and that whole restaurant, they just became part of our ambiance and meal, helping us pick stuff out and pairing wine with our different courses and things like that. But there's a lot of pride if you think about and read how the Irish race influenced the world, and more particularly the United States in politics, and they are largely responsible for a significant portion of the building of the infrastructure in this country, the railroad systems, the canals, the seaways. They were very, very diligent workers and did everything with passion, including drinking and playing music. They bar nothing. Thomas Cahill, I think it is, that wrote a book that How the Irish Saved Civilization. Did you ever read that?
I haven't read it, but I've heard of it's on my list.
But it truly is amazing when you look at the size of that country compared to the rest of the world, and you think about the influence with poetry, with music, with, I think, work ethic and all that. That's how it all came from that little place of a couple million, few million people, and what is meant in the world. I was flattered on different occasions to be invited by our U.S. Congressman to Washington, D.C. to one time meet the President of Ireland, Mary Robinson, when she was coming to the U.S. with her husband, Nick. Outside the official government delegation, I was the very first person that was non-governmental related to meet her and her husband. And, of course, at that time it was President Clinton, so I met Hillary, and I've met Al Gore a couple of times, which I don't particularly care for him either. But another time, a couple of years ago, I was invited down where Bertie Ahern was stepping down as the Taoiseach, the Prime Minister of the Republic of Ireland, and he was going to address a joint session of Congress. And I was invited down for that ceremony. And part of what I wanted to know, the invitation came on Friday, the speech was going to be, I think, on a Monday or something, as I called Dublin and spoke to Dermot's wife, Maeve, and I said, hey, is Dermot coming to Washington for this ceremony? And she said, yeah. And I said, all right, then I'm going. Tell him I'll get in touch with him. So as I'm driving to Flint to catch a plane to Washington, D.C., the embassy in Dublin called me and told me where he was staying and the contact information. So I got with him at that occasion and met, of course, the Taoiseach and Ted Kennedy and other significant U.S. Irish connected people in a very private reception following that address to the joint session of Congress. It was incredible. I didn't particularly care either for some of the Ted Kennedy politics and things like that, but nevertheless, what that family, I love reading about his brothers John and Joe, but what they meant, it was an honor to to meet somebody from that family. So, or not Joe, Bobby, I guess it was. So, which you two were probably not even born when they were both killed. So, but it's huge what influence that they've had in this country. So, to be in a private reception with them was like, wow. I don't care what his politics are. Here's an icon in what has helped form the way this country is. So.
Yeah, when we were in Ireland, they mentioned the Kennedys and whatnot, and Clinton as well.
Actually, President Clinton, he did a significant amount, but I think a lot of that had to do with George Mitchell, his diplomacy and his Irish ancestry and the respect that he held from both parties, Sam Adams and Martin McGuinness and Paisley and the others in Ireland that respected him, and that he was able to keep bringing them to the table and come up with some compromises that brought this everlasting peace to Ireland. And the Good Friday Agreement was very significant in Irish history, as you well know. And we had just been with the Gallaghers the week before that, staying with them at their home and riding around with Dermot when he was taking calls from, at the time, Tony Blair, or Jerry Adams, and Martin McGuinness and others, that he was helping put the touches on that agreement. And then on that Good Friday, which was only a couple days we were back here, saw him in the background at the signing of that agreement. And at the time, I said to Tammy, I said, the kids have no idea the significance of what this means in Irish history, but they were with one of the guys. It's the Taoiseach and the others that are the figureheads, but it took a lot of people to put all that stuff together, and our dear friend Dermot was right in the middle of all of it. So it was really cool to be part of that.
Oh, it's amazing that my sense is that you feel very connected to your, Irish heritage and history, but also you're very connected in like a very current contemporary sense to Ireland.
Yeah, if you ever read any of Morgan Llewellyn's 1916, 1921, The Last Princes of Ireland. Yeah.
Mr. Broward is here. He has a question about his bill.
I'll be down in a little bit. I'm busy at the moment.
Okay.
Okay. But yeah, it's the Irish history is built around turmoil, and there was injustices that were done there many, many generations ago. But in talking to my friend Jerry Early, as I say, they're still passionate about everything they do. Is when the economy was going so well in Ireland, I said, if you had not been invaded or pretty much taken over and influenced so much by the English, and you didn't speak the English language, you probably wouldn't be the world player that you are today. He said, I never kind of thought about that. But it's kind of sweet justice, or sweet whatever, but poetic justice, something. But they were wronged big time by Britain with what they were done and how they were pushed down and forced out and starved, and which they didn't have to. There was plenty of food there. They were just shipping it all out of the country. They wouldn't allow them to fish, and it's horrible what was done there. So.
I don't know.
You covered a lot. I'm trying to think of what else we should mention.
Is this kind of what you wanted?
Oh, exactly.
Is it?
Yeah, it was really great.
I don't know.
I guess we're also interested in just any sort of family stories. Like, did your parents tell you stories that their parents had told them, or anything about
Not really. Not too many stories because it was so many generations ago that until we went to Arranmore, I had no idea it was going to be that significant of a connection when those little kids, get the goosebumps, when those little kids said, oh, in Lake Michigan, and I looked at them, but how in the hell do you know about Lake Michigan when I just know a little bit about Arranmore? And then for them to grab an atlas and be pointing it out, and they say they teach it to us in our schools. This, as I said, was very difficult for me to ever leave. I have a house here on Beaver Island, but I consider Beaver Island my home. I could live anywhere here. This is my home. And I didn't want to leave it. But when I was over there, after less than 48 hours, this Philly Boyle, God rest him, he looked at me and he could see the tears in my eyes and he said, you don't want to leave here. And I said, I can't believe how I feel about this place in this short of a period of time. It went right to the soul. So that there was a connection that, and the sadness about the ancestors that left there never to return. I don't know if you've traveled around Ireland, but one of the places that we make sure everybody goes is Cove. It's COBH, but they have that Maritime Interpretive Center. It wasn't there in 1982, but I've been there a couple of times since then, and they have like the Molly Brown, and they're playing this music that shows the mom and dad taking the children and sending them with an aunt and uncle or somebody, send them by a boat to America, and they know that they were never going to see them again. It's hard. It's really cool.
I was going to say, we've heard a lot of stories about the whole tradition of American weeks. Do you know about that? You know how they would have...
Yeah, I can't imagine that how that had to just tear them apart. That they were leaving and to know they'd never be back or never see their parents again or something like that. So... Anyway.
Sad note.
Yeah.
But I feel the Irish definitely put up a good fight. And I don't know, they deal with loss in a very interesting way. I've always noticed with music, with the shannos and everything, they incorporate it into their life.
Yeah. Well, it's how the Irish can find humor, too, in the most god-awful incidences and things that have been dealt with them. Somehow they just rise above it and persevere and are tenacious. And I honestly, that passion that they have about everything they do, it shines through. And people that visit that country, Ireland and Hawaii, are the two most repeated vacation destinations in the world. And I've never been to Hawaii. My youngest brother tells me I would love it, and I do love islands. And I know I wouldn't love it more than Arranmore, but my vacations are centered around water or boating or this or that. And Ireland is the way that you're treated and everything else. And it's a tragedy for me to be sitting in a pub next to some old guy that's from the area that you just warm up to and you're genuinely interested in his history and his take on what's going on in Ireland and in the U.S. And in a lot of cases they're more educated about what's going on here politically than 90+% of the people that live in this country. But anyway, to see another American walk in that feels that they're superior to the Irish race or whatever, and to see them get totally cut off at the knees from really getting to meet some of the finest people they would ever have the opportunity to meet. It's just like, it's embarrassing. It's like, what an asshole. You have no idea what you just did or what you just cut yourself out of, and how sad is that? So, But I love it. Go there and treat them with respect and be very cautious about flipping out money and buying them beer and this and that. You can do it, but you have to do it very subtly. They're very proud, and you don't just go in there like appearing to be a rich American and think you're going to buy your way into them talking to you or spilling their hearts out to you. It's not going to happen. So they can tell. They're smart as hell. They can tell if you're interested or if you're phony. So, of course, as I said, they can tell from 2 miles away that you're an American just by the way we dress and, as they say, your teeth. So what are you talking about? You Americans all have such beautiful teeth. Did you ever hear that?
Yeah.
Have you ever heard anybody else tell you that? I've heard that different times from different Irish people that have nothing to do with each other. That they say, hey, you can tell they're American by your teeth. Wow. Guess I should have taken a little better care of mine.
Did we cover everything?
I think so, and more. So this has been really, really great. Any final thoughts or?
No, just glad to visit with you. And as you can tell, I have a real passion for that place. And love going over there and fishing with my buddy, the lobster pots, and which it's really cool. I have fished over there more in a weekend or a week than I have fished around Beaver Island my entire life. So I go over there with him and we bait the lobster pots, and we do it the way they've done it over there for hundreds of years, and catch fresh lobster and fresh fish, and get crab toes and cook them over on top of a turf fire and break them open and have it with the Guinness. And I don't know if you know what winkles are, but winkles are really small snails, and you can cook them, and you actually have to take like a pin and get them out. But they used to eat winkles, and you know what green melons are, but what they would do just to feed their family and just survive. So it's cool to go there and walk amongst them rocks and know that for hundreds and hundreds of years people were there picking winkles and doing whatever they had to survive. So.
But there's definitely something about Arranmore versus any other part of Ireland you've been to.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
I love visiting Ireland, but now it would be like coming to Beaver Island a first time and you not really knowing anybody. You kind of hit and miss different areas and sites, but once you get here, if you two came a few times, there's certain places that you think, oh my God, you have to go to this place on the island, and that's how it is to me now to Ireland, is that I would never go there and not go to Arranmore. It's pretty much 2-3 weeks at a time when we go. I pride myself in saying I only have to spend one night on the mainland, and that's the night before we fly back home. I'm an islander. I want to be on that island, and when it's lashing rain and it's blowing and you're looking out to the mainland, and with my buddy Jerry we'll be sitting there visiting, and I'll say, you know what, those people over there are looking this way and saying, oh, those poor people in Arranmore, they're stranded, they're getting all this horrible weather and they're stuck, and we're sitting there, I'm saying, those people can't get here today. I don't want to go there. I'm where I want to be. They can't get here. So just totally reverse of what they would think. So, and there's people when we leave there, and it can be, as they say, you can go for 3 weeks and say it only rained twice, once for 8 days and once for 12 days. So, but there's people that when we go, they just shake their heads when we leave there, and they say, we can't believe for you that if you have 3 weeks vacation that you always want to come back to Arranmore. But when they see me leave there, they just leave me alone, because I want to sit in the back of that boat and just take it all in until the return. So, yeah.
It's wonderful.
Yep. It's a magical place. It really is. So.
And to be reconnected like that, I think that's something really special.
Yeah. And it's only with that island. Like I said, Dublin's fun. Dingle is beautiful. The Cliffs of Moher are beautiful. But that's all kind of sad too, because the Cliffs of Moher, Christ, we used to walk along the cliffs and parked in a field and walk to the cliffs and walk down, and you could see the peninsula that juts out and all that. And now because of lawyers and everything else, they destroy everything, because you can't even get close, and there's paved parking lots and souvenir shops and everything else. And so some of that charm is compromised by the sheer number of people, but hey, they need the people to go over there and stimulate the economy too. So it's a mixed blessing, bittersweet, exactly. Yeah.
And have other Beaver Island Irish families made that pilgrimage, in a sense, over to Arranmore?
Not nearly as much or as often as Tammy and I, but there's quite a few people that I know that whenever they get a chance, and a whole lot more of them if they had the financial ability, it's very, very important for them that they want to go back and get to know the place. And so, but when we go over, there's no question. When we get on the ferry, there's an islander rate. If we have to pay it all, because if the owner of the boat's there, he will leave his car on the mainland so that we can get our car on. He's done that. Just take us on. And my buddy Jerry said, "You son of a bitch, what? He's not even going to charge you. I ride this all the time and I have to pay." Stuff like that. I just think that they're so, I don't know if grateful is the word, or they're just so proud that we have this passion for their home, that they like it so much that they love to see us come. And every time we go to Mass, the priest says, "Oh, Bill and Tammy are back," and it's embarrassing, but we know that a lot of people, and unfortunately, since we've gone there in 82, there's been a lot of very, very dear friends now that have died over there too. So, but that goes with getting older. So, anyway.
Getting close to people.
Yeah.
Making those connections.
Yeah. Yep. And some of them have been very, very sad. Car death was one, and another guy from the same family, the Boyle family, that was actually the driver of a car that they were just leaving Arranmore and going back to work on the mainland, and they were in a car accident. And this Pat that I tell you about, that's Pat and Jerry right there. That's our view from our house, actually, right here, looking out to the mainland. And that's one of the ferries now. But anyway, Jerry's wife, Pat, her youngest sister, her name was Maeve, was killed in this accident. And the driver of the car is the oldest son to this Philly and Kathleen that I told you about that met us with the tractor the very first time in 1982. And he's still bedridden and requires 24-hour care. And this happened like 7 years ago. It's when they say there's worse things than dying. Pat and her mom and dad and her sisters and brothers, it's still very, very difficult, but thank God her life was taken, because she was the life of the party, and she was, as they say, great crack, C-R-A-I-C, and just a beautiful girl and all that. Jesus, that was traumatic. And actually, it was only like 5 months before the Beaver Island crowd went to Arranmore for the twinning ceremony, which had already been planned. But in goosebumps again, all of those months up until the time that we arrived, there wasn't a musical instrument played, there wasn't anything going on at the pubs and everything else. And Tammy and I were asked to go with the group. And I told Tammy, I said, we can't go and show up in Arranmore with a group. I said, you and I have to go first and see Gerald and Madge and Jerry and Pat, have our time with them so we could express our sympathies and all that before we show up for a party. And so we did, and we had a good few days with all of them before the rest of the crowd showed up. And when the rest of the crowd showed up, it was a huge part of the healing process of Maeve's death. Jerry hadn't played the guitar. He plays the guitar, and he hadn't played it ever since. And he picked it up, and it was one of those coincidental things that when you say things happen for a reason, the 60 people that showed up there from Beaver Island, it was perfect timing. Enough time had gone by that the island was dealing with the grief of the loss of one of their treasures. So
Incredible.
yeah.
And how long did the twinning ceremony last? Was it like a weekend thing?
Yeah. And it poured, and it rained, and it blew, everything. It was typical Irish weather. And like I said, Tammy and I were there before the rest of them. And then, like I said, it just lashed rain and everything else. When the ferry was leaving with all them, because we were staying a couple extra days, most of them had never been to Ireland before, so they wanted to tour around, which that's great. We had already done all that touring. I had no desire to go and do it some more. So our plans were we're staying on Arranmore for a couple more days. When the ferry back out from the pier on Arranmore, it's like that. The sky opened up and the sun came out. And then you know how when you plan an event and you're just concerned, you want everything to go right and flawless and make sure everybody has a good time and all that. Well, my God, the party that happened the night that they left, when we walked back in, they said, oh, the Maine Beavers are still here. They called us the Maine Beavers. The party that night was incredible because everything had gone so well, and that the love and the appreciation and the connection, it was rock solid. There was no denying it. And so the party was on that night, and it's like, holy shit, it went on all night. And we were part of that. It was not much better than when they were all there, but it was totally the people of Arranmore celebrating the fact that, okay, we pulled this off. They all had a great time, and they consider us part of them now. So we were just included in all this, and it was cool as hell. So anyway, yep.
Well, that's a great note to end on. So
yeah,
great.
all right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, and
it's a pleasure
for your questions and everything else. So
we may have to go